The hospital ship New Hope moved slowly through space toward the planet Kepler 442b. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge, watching the blue and green world grow larger on the main screen. She had been flying medical ships for 15 years, but this mission felt different. The war between the Galactic Confederation and the outer colonies had been going on for 3 years now, and the wounded kept coming. "Captain, we're getting signals from the planet's surface," said Jake Miller from his communications station. "Lots of emergency broadcasts. Sounds like civilian casualties are heavy down there." Lisa nodded. "Any word from the military about safe passage?" "The Confederation forces promised us safe travel," Jake replied. "All alien fleets in this sector have been told we're coming. Medical neutrality should protect us." Dr. Alex Carter walked onto the bridge, still wearing his surgical scrubs. He looked tired, like everyone else on the ship. "How long until we reach orbit?" he asked. 6 hours, Lisa answered. "How are your medical teams doing?" Alex rubbed his eyes. "Ready as we can be. Kelly Brooks has the surgical bay prepared, and Peter Williams has organized the trauma teams. We brought enough supplies to treat 5,000 patients. The question is whether that will be enough." Lisa looked at the doctor with respect. Alex had volunteered for this mission even though his wife had just given birth to their first child back on Earth. Many of the crew had families they left behind, but they came anyway. That was what humans did. When people needed help, humans showed up. "Any idea what we're dealing with down there?" Lisa asked. "Reports say there was a massive orbital bombardment 3 days ago," Alex explained. "The planet's main cities were hit hard: hospitals, schools, civilian shelters. The local medical system is completely overwhelmed." Jake turned from his station. "Captain, I'm picking up more transmissions. Sounds like the planet's government is asking for any medical help they can get. They're not even asking about payment or politics. They just need doctors." "That's why we're here," Lisa said simply. The New Hope was one of Earth's newest hospital ships. It carried the most advanced medical equipment humans had ever built. The ship had 30 operating rooms, beds, for 800 patients and a crew of 200 medical professionals. Most importantly, it flew under the protection of the Galactic Medical Neutrality Treaty. This ancient law said that no military force could attack medical ships or personnel. It had been honored by every civilized species for over 200 years. Dr. Carter returned to the medical bay where his team was making final preparations. Nurse Kelly Brooks was checking supply inventories for the 3rd time. She was young but skilled, fresh from Earth's best medical school. "How are we looking?" Alex asked her. "We have everything we need," Kelly said. "Blood supplies, surgical, equipment, emergency medications. Peter has the surgical teams ready to work in shifts. We can operate around the clock if we need to." Dr. Peter Williams joined them. He was an older surgeon with gray hair and steady hands. He had worked on hospital ships before and knew what they were facing. "I've seen the casualty reports," he said quietly. "Mostly burns and trauma injuries. A lot of children." Alex felt his stomach tighten. He thought about his own newborn daughter back home. "We'll save as many as we can." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All medical personnel, this is Captain Morgan. We'll be in orbit in 5 hours. Please complete all preparations. Remember, we are operating under medical neutrality. We treat everyone who needs help, regardless of which side they're on in this war." In the communications room, Jake Miller was busy sending out broadcasts on all frequencies. The messages were simple and clear. "This is the Earth Hospital ship New Hope. We are on a medical mission to provide humanitarian aid. We carry no weapons and pose no military threat. We request safe passage under the Galactic Medical Neutrality Treaty." The ship's computer automatically repeated these messages in 17 different alien languages. The New Hope's hull was painted, bright white with large red crosses visible from space. Every sensor signature and identification code marked it clearly as a medical vessel. Captain Morgan walked through the ship, checking on her crew. In the surgical bay, she found teams of doctors and nurses preparing their equipment. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency. They had drilled for this kind of mission many times. "Captain," called Dr. Carter as she passed. "Thank you for taking this mission. I know it's dangerous." Lisa stopped and looked at the young doctor. "That planet has children who need help. We have the ability to help them. It's not really a choice." She continued her rounds, visiting the various medical departments. The trauma center was ready with emergency equipment. The pediatric ward had been set up with special care for injured children. The pharmaceutical bay was stocked with enough medicine to treat thousands of patients. As the New Hope approached the planet, Jake Miller received confirmation from the Confederation fleet. "Medical vessel New Hope, you are cleared for approach. To Kepler 442b, safe passage is guaranteed under medical neutrality protocols." Captain Morgan felt relieved. The war had made space travel dangerous, but medical ships were supposed to be safe. The neutrality treaty protected them. No civilized species would attack a hospital ship. Dr. Carter gathered his medical teams for a final briefing. "We're going to see terrible things down there," he told them. "But remember why we're here. We're here to heal. We're here to help. We're here because that's what humans do." Kelly Brooks raised her hand. "Doctor, what if we run out of supplies?" "Then we improvise," Alex answered. "We use whatever we have. We save everyone we can." Peter Williams nodded. "I've worked disaster zones before. The key is to stay focused and keep working. Every life we save matters." The ship entered orbit around Kepler 442b. From space, they could see the damage. Smoke still rose from several cities. The once beautiful planet looked wounded. "Beginning transport operations," announced the ship's pilot. "First medical team will be on the surface in 2 hours." Captain Morgan watched the planet below. She thought about her own children, safe back on Earth. She thought about the parents on that planet who were waiting for help. The New Hope carried the best medical team and equipment that humanity had to offer. They would do everything they could. "Jake, keep broadcasting our medical status," she ordered. "Make sure everyone knows we're here to help." "Yes, Captain," Jake replied. "Medical neutrality signals are transmitting on all frequencies." The New Hope settled into orbit, its medical bay ready to receive patients. The crew prepared for the hardest work of their lives, saving strangers in a war zone. They had no idea that their mercy mission would soon change the course of galactic history. War Commander Thexaval of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human vessel through the view screen. The ship was clearly marked as a medical vessel, painted white with red symbols that meant healing in most galactic languages. His tactical officer had confirmed that the ship was broadcasting medical neutrality codes on all frequencies. "Commander," his tactical officer spoke with the clicking sounds of the Zephyrian language. "The human vessel requests safe passage. They claim to be on a medical mission." Thexval's 4 arms moved with irritation. His scaled green skin darkened, showing his anger. The Zephyrians had been fighting humans for months now, and he was tired of human tricks. "Medical mission?" he hissed. "These humans think they can fool us with their soft words." "Sir, the neutrality codes are valid," the tactical officer insisted. Under galactic law, we cannot attack a medical vessel. Galactic law was made by weak species, Thexval replied. The Zephyrian Empire follows no law but strength. These humans dare to enter our territory. They think their painted symbols will protect them. On the New Hope, Captain Lisa Morgan was preparing to send the first medical shuttle to the planet's surface when Jake Miller called out from his station. Captain, I'm detecting a Zephyrian war fleet approaching. 5 ships, heavy, cruiser class. Lisa felt a chill but remained calm. Are they responding to our medical neutrality broadcasts? I'm trying to contact them now, Jake said, working at his controls. New Hope to Zephyrian Fleet. We are a medical vessel on a humanitarian mission. We request safe passage under the Galactic Medical Neutrality Treaty. The response came quickly, but it was not what they expected. Human vessel, you are trespassing in Zephyrian space. Prepare to be destroyed. They must not understand, Lisa said. Jake, broadcast our medical codes again. Make it clear we have no weapons and we're only here to help wounded civilians. Jake sent the message again, this time in the Zephyrian language. Zephyrian Fleet. This is the hospital ship New Hope. We carry medical personnel and supplies only. We have no weapons. We are protected under medical neutrality laws recognized by all civilized species. Dr. Alex Carter had come to the bridge when he heard about the approaching ships. Captain, surely they won't attack a hospital ship. The neutrality treaty has been honored for over 2 centuries. I hope you're right, Lisa replied, but her voice showed worry. On the Zephyrian flagship, the communications officer translated the human messages for Commander Thexval. They insist they are a medical vessel, Commander. They claim protection under the neutrality treaty. Thexval's tail lashed with anger. The treaty was made by weak species who fear real war. Humans think they can hide behind their medicine, while their military attacks our worlds. Today we show them that Zephyrians recognize no human laws. Commander, the tactical officer said carefully, if we attack a medical vessel, it could cause diplomatic problems with the Confederation. The Confederation is full of cowards, Thexval snapped. They will do nothing. These humans need to learn that mercy is weakness. Target their ship. Back on the New Hope, alarms began sounding throughout the medical bay. Dr. Carter ran to his stations where Kelly Brooks and Peter Williams were preparing medical equipment. What's happening? Kelly asked, her face pale with fear. Zephyrian ships, Alex explained quickly. They're not responding to our neutrality codes. Peter Williams, who had served on hospital ships during other conflicts, felt his blood go cold. In 30 years of medical service, I've never seen anyone attack a hospital ship. It's unthinkable. Captain Morgan's voice came over the intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We have Zephyrian warships approaching. They are not acknowledging our medical status. All medical personnel should prepare for emergency evacuation procedures. Dr. Carter couldn't believe what he was hearing. They can't attack us. We're here to help wounded people. We have medical supplies for thousands of patients. The first energy blast hit the New Hope's outer hull. The ship shook violently, throwing people to the floor. Emergency lights began, flashing as the main power systems took damage. They're actually shooting at us, Jake Miller called out from the communications station. Captain, our shields are down to 60%. Lisa Morgan grabbed the ship's intercom. All hands, we are under attack. This is not a drill. All medical. Personnel to emergency stations. Prepare for possible evacuation. Another blast hit the ship, this one targeting the medical bay directly. The lights went out for several seconds before emergency power came online. In the medical bay, Dr. Carter helped Kelly Brooks to her feet. We have to protect the patients, Alex said. Some of the wounded from yesterday's shuttle runs are still in recovery. Peter Williams was already moving toward the patient wards. I'll get the mobile patients to the escape pods. Kelly, help me with the stretcher cases. The Zephyrian ships moved closer, firing continuously at the defenseless hospital ship. Commander Thexval watched with satisfaction as the human vessel's shields failed. Continue firing, he ordered. Make sure there are no survivors. Let this be a lesson to all humans who think their mercy makes them safe. On the New Hope, Captain Morgan was trying to coordinate evacuation efforts when a massive explosion rocked the ship. The bridge caught fire and she could see that the main hull was breaking apart. Jake, get to the escape pods, she ordered. Send a distress signal to any human ships in the area. I'm not leaving you, Captain, Jake replied, still working at his damaged station. That's an order, Lisa shouted. Someone needs to tell Earth what happened here. Dr. Carter was in the medical bay, trying to save as many patients as possible. The ship was falling apart around them, but he and his team kept working. Kelly Brooks was helping move patients toward the emergency pods when another explosion threw her against the wall. Doctor, she called out, blood running from a cut on her forehead. The pod bay is damaged. We can only launch 3 pods. Alex looked around the medical bay. They had 47 patients, plus his medical team. 3 pods could hold maybe 30 people total. We save the patients first, he decided. Get the children to the pods. Peter Williams appeared at his side. Alex, the ship's breaking up. We have maybe 5 minutes. The 2 doctors worked together, loading patients into the escape pods. Kelly Brooks helped despite her injury. They managed to fill 2 pods with patients and medical staff. Captain Morgan made it to the pod bay just as the final pod was being loaded. She was badly injured, with burns on her arms and face. How many did we save? She asked. 31 people, Alex replied. 23 patients, 8 crew members. The rest? Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Alex looked at the floor. We ran out of time. The final escape pod launched just as the New Hope exploded. The small pod tumbled through space, its occupants watching their hospital ship die in a ball of fire. Dr. Carter held Kelly Brooks as she cried. Peter Williams sat in stunned silence. Jake Miller activated the pod's emergency transmitter. This is Escape Pod 7 from the hospital ship New Hope. We are the survivors of an unprovoked attack by Zephyrian forces. Our ship was destroyed while on a medical mission. The Zephyrians fired on a clearly marked hospital ship carrying wounded civilians. Captain Morgan, dying from her injuries, used her last strength to speak into the transmitter. This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the New Hope. The Zephyrians attacked us without warning. We were carrying medical supplies and wounded patients. They showed no mercy to a medical vessel. Tell Earth. Tell them what happened here. She died a few minutes later, in the small pod floating in space. Dr. Carter closed her eyes and promised himself that her death would not be forgotten. The Zephyrians had broken the oldest law of civilized warfare. They had attacked a hospital ship and murdered medical personnel. In the distance, the Zephyrian fleet moved away, leaving only debris and 1 small escape pod. War Commander Thexval was satisfied. He had shown the humans that mercy was weakness. He had no idea that he had just awakened something terrible in the human spirit. The rescue ship Eagle's Wing found the escape pod 18 hours after the New Hope was destroyed. Dr. Alex Carter sat in the medical bay of the rescue ship, staring at his hands. They had saved 31 lives, but 169 people had died on the hospital ship. 169 doctors, nurses, patients and crew members murdered while trying to help wounded civilians. Kelly Brooks sat beside him, her head bandaged, but her spirit unbroken. "Doctor, we need to tell people what happened. The galaxy needs to know what the Zephyrians did." Jake Miller was at a computer terminal preparing his official report. His communication equipment had recorded everything, including Captain Morgan's final words. "I've got all the transmissions saved," he said. "Every message we sent about medical neutrality, every request for safe passage, everything they ignored before they killed us." Peter Williams looked older than his 60 years. "In all my time, serving on hospital ships, nothing like this has ever happened. The medical neutrality treaty has always been sacred. Even the most violent species have respected it. The Eagle's Wing brought them to New Austin, the nearest human colony. Dr. Carter and his survivors were taken immediately to the Colonial Council building. The Council was Earth's representative government for the outer colonies, and they needed to hear what had happened. Council Chairman Robert Kane sat behind a large wooden desk, listening to Dr. Carter's testimony. Kane was a politician, more concerned with keeping peace than fighting wars. Around the room sat 12 other council members, all looking uncomfortable. "Dr. Carter," Chairman Kane said carefully, "are you absolutely certain that your ship was clearly marked as a medical vessel?" Alex felt anger rising in his chest. "Chairman Kane, we were painted white with red crosses. We broadcast medical neutrality codes on all frequencies. We sent messages in 17 languages explaining our mission. The Zephyrians knew exactly what we were." Council member Sarah Price leaned forward. "Perhaps there was some misunderstanding. Maybe they thought you were a military vessel disguised as a medical ship." Jake Miller stood up from his chair. "There was no misunderstanding. I have recordings of our communications. We told them repeatedly that we were a hospital ship. They understood perfectly. They just didn't care." Kelly Brooks spoke with quiet anger. "They murdered patients, wounded civilians who were being treated in our medical bay, children who needed surgery. How do you misunderstand that?" Chairman Kane looked uncomfortable. "I understand your anger, but we must be careful how we respond. The Zephyrian Empire is a powerful military force. If we accuse them of war crimes, it could make the war much worse." Dr. Carter couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Worse? They attacked a hospital ship. They killed medical personnel. How could it get worse?" "War is complicated, Doctor," said Council Member John Davis. "Sometimes terrible things happen in battle. We must look at the bigger picture." Peter Williams, who had been quiet until now, stood up slowly. "Gentlemen, I have served on medical ships for 30 years. I have treated soldiers from every species in this galaxy. Never, not once, has anyone attacked a clearly marked hospital ship. This was not a mistake. This was murder." The council members looked at each other nervously. They were politicians, not soldiers. They wanted to find a diplomatic solution that would avoid more fighting. Chairman Kane cleared his throat. "We will, of course, file a formal complaint with the Galactic Confederation. We will ask for an investigation into the incident." "An investigation?" Alex asked. "What's to investigate? They attacked us. They killed us. Jake has recordings of everything." "The process must be followed," Kane replied. "We cannot simply accuse a member species of the Confederation without proper procedures." The survivors left the council building feeling frustrated and angry. Outside, they met with families of the crew members who had died. Mary Carter, Alex's wife, held their 3-month-old daughter Emma. She had flown from Earth as soon as she heard about the attack. "They're not going to do anything, are they?" Mary asked, seeing the expression on her husband's face. The Council wants to be diplomatic, Alex said bitterly. They're afraid of making the Zephyrians angry. Jake Miller's parents were there, along with the families of Kelly Brooks and Peter Williams. All of them wanted answers. All of them wanted justice for their loved ones. What about the Galactic Confederation? Asked Kelly's mother. Surely they'll prosecute the Zephyrians for war crimes. Alex shook his head. The Confederation is meeting next week, but Chairman Kane made it clear that they're more interested in keeping peace than finding justice. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Confederation delivered their response. Ambassador Janet Stone read the official statement to the survivors and families gathered in the council chambers. The Confederation deeply regrets the unfortunate incident involving the Earth Hospital ship New Hope, she read in a flat, diplomatic voice. However, after careful investigation, the Confederation finds that the destruction of the vessel occurred during active military operations in a contested zone. While the loss of life is regrettable, it cannot be classified as a war crime under current galactic law. The room erupted in angry voices. Dr. Carter stood up, his face red with fury. Contested zone? We were on a medical mission. We had permission from the Confederation to enter that space. Ambassador Stone continued reading. The Confederation notes that the Zephyrian Empire has agreed to compensate the families of those lost in the incident. They have also agreed to be more careful in future military operations. Kelly Brooks began crying. Compensation? They think money can bring back the doctors and nurses they murdered? Peter Williams's wife Linda stood up, her voice shaking with rage. My husband spent 30 years saving lives. He was murdered while trying to help wounded children. And you call it an incident? Chairman Kane tried to restore order. Please, everyone calm down. We understand your anger, but the Confederation has made its decision. We must accept it and move forward. Move forward? Jake Miller asked. What about justice? What about the law? Sometimes the law is not enough, Kane replied. Sometimes we must accept imperfect solutions for the greater good. Dr. Carter looked around the room at the grieving families, at his surviving colleagues, at the politicians who cared more about peace than justice. He realized that the system had failed. The laws that were supposed to protect medical personnel meant nothing if no one would enforce them. That night, Alex sat in his hotel room with Mary and baby Emma. His wife could see the change in him. The gentle doctor who had left for the mission was gone, replaced by someone harder and angrier. What are you thinking about? Mary asked. Alex looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib. I'm thinking about the children who died on the New Hope. I'm thinking about Captain Morgan, who died trying to protect patients. I'm thinking about how the galaxy just told us that human lives don't matter. The Council said they would increase protection for medical ships, Mary offered. With what? Alex asked. Diplomatic notes? Formal complaints? The Zephyrians have learned that they can murder medical personnel without consequences. How long before other species decide to follow their example? Mary took his hand. Alex, I know you're angry. We all are. But what can we do? Alex looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrians were celebrating their victory. Somewhere out there, other species were learning that humans could be killed without punishment. I don't know yet, he said quietly. But something has to change. The galaxy has to learn that there are consequences for murdering medical personnel. He thought about Dr. Benjamin Hayes, a former colleague who had left medical service to become a researcher. Hayes had always been brilliant, maybe too brilliant. Alex had heard rumors that Hayes had left medicine because he discovered things that frightened him. Maybe it was time to contact an old friend. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy that humans could be more than just healers. Maybe it was time to teach the galaxy to fear what happened when peaceful people were pushed too far. Outside his window, the stars looked cold and distant. But Alex Carter was no longer the same man who had volunteered for a mercy mission. The attack on the New Hope had changed him, just as it would change all of humanity. The age of human mercy was ending. The age of human justice was about to begin. Dr. Benjamin Hayes stood in his laboratory on Terra Nova Research Station, watching the news reports about the New Hope incident. His hands shook as he read the Galactic Confederation's response. An incident. That's what they called the murder of 169 medical personnel. An unfortunate incident in a contested zone. Hayes was not a typical scientist. At 45 years old, he had 3 doctoral degrees in biology, military strategy, and xenological studies. Before becoming a researcher, he had worked for Earth's military intelligence, developing weapon systems that were so effective they scared even him. That's why he had quit and become a peaceful researcher, studying alien biology instead of finding ways to kill aliens. But the attack on the New Hope changed everything. Dr. Susan Lee, his research partner, found him in the lab at 3 in the morning, staring at the news feeds. Susan was a younger scientist, brilliant in her own right, but she had never seen Hayes like this. "Ben, you've been here for 18 hours, she said gently. "You need to get some sleep." Hayes didn't look away from the screen. "Did you read?" "The Confederation's response, Susan. They're calling it an incident. They're giving the Zephyrians a diplomatic slap on the wrist for murdering medical personnel." "I know you're angry," Susan said. "We all are, but the politicians will figure something out." Hayes finally turned to look at her. His eyes were cold in a way that made Susan step back. "The politicians have figured something out. They figured out that human lives don't matter. They figured out that any alien species can murder our doctors and nurses without consequences." "Ben, what are you thinking about?" Susan asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Hayes walked to his computer and began pulling up files. Research files on alien biology that he had been working on for years. "Do you know why I left military research, Susan?" "You said you wanted to help people instead of hurting them. I left because I discovered how easy it would be to kill entire alien species," Hayes said quietly. "Each species has biological weaknesses, unique genetic markers, specific vulnerabilities that could be exploited." Susan felt a chill run down her spine. "Ben, that's genocide research. That's illegal under galactic law." "Galactic law," Hayes repeated with a bitter laugh. "You mean the same law that's supposed to protect medical ships? The same law that the Confederation just ignored when it mattered?" He pulled up a file marked Zephyrian Respiratory Biology. The screen filled with complex diagrams and genetic sequences. "The Zephyrians have a unique respiratory system," Hayes explained, his voice becoming clinical and cold. "They breathe a mixture of gases that no other species uses. Their lung structure is completely different from any other known life form." "Why are you showing me this?" Susan asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "Because 3 years ago, I discovered that their respiratory system has a fatal weakness. A specific virus could be engineered to target only Zephyrian lung tissue. It would be undetectable until it was too late, and it would be 100% fatal." Susan backed away from the computer. "Ben, you can't be thinking what I think you're thinking." Hayes pulled up another file. The Krillians have a hive mind connection through bioelectric fields. Disrupt the field, and you destroy their ability to think. They become helpless. Another file appeared. The Luxari are energy beings who need specific electromagnetic frequencies to maintain cohesion. Change the frequency, and they simply dissolve. Ben, stop, Susan said. This is madness. You're talking about weapons of mass destruction. Hayes finally looked at her again. I'm talking about justice, Susan. I'm talking about teaching the galaxy that there are consequences for murdering medical personnel. You can't seriously be considering this. Why not? Hayes asked. The Confederation has made it clear that diplomacy doesn't work. The politicians have made it clear that they won't protect us. Someone has to. Susan tried to reason with him. Ben, if you create these weapons, you'll be no better than the Zephyrians who attacked the hospital ship. The Zephyrians attacked innocent medical personnel who were trying to help wounded civilians, Hayes replied. I would be targeting military forces of species that commit war crimes. There's a difference. Is there? Susan asked. Once you cross that line, where does it end? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up one more file. This one showed the crew roster of the New Hope, pictures of doctors, nurses, and medical technicians who had died trying to help others. It ends when species like the Zephyrians learn that murdering medical personnel has consequences, he said. It ends when hospital ships are safe again. Susan looked at the pictures on the screen. She recognized some of the faces. Dr. Carter had been Hayes's student years ago. Several of the nurses had graduated from programs that Susan had helped develop. There has to be another way, she said weakly. What way? Hayes asked. More diplomatic protests? More formal complaints? More committee meetings? Susan, they just told us that alien species can murder our medical personnel without punishment. What diplomatic solution fixes that? Over the next few days, Hayes worked with frightening intensity. He pulled research from databases across human, space, combining years of biological studies with military strategy. Susan watched him transform from a peaceful researcher into something she didn't recognize. Ben, people are starting to ask questions, she warned him. The station director wants to know what you're working on. Tell him I'm developing new medical treatments, Hayes replied without looking up from his work. That's not exactly a lie, Susan said, looking at his screen, but these aren't treatments for humans. Hayes had been working on biological weapons disguised as medical research, viruses that could target specific alien species, neural disruptors that could destroy hive mind connections, frequency generators that could dissolve energy-based life forms. Ben, I can't be part of this, Susan said. This is too dangerous. Hayes finally stopped working and looked at her. Then leave, Susan. I'm not forcing you to stay, but I'm not stopping either. What about your career? What about your reputation? If anyone finds out what you're doing here, you'll be arrested. My career doesn't matter if medical ships aren't safe, Hayes replied. My reputation doesn't matter if alien species can murder human doctors without consequences. Susan gathered her personal items and prepared to transfer to another research station. Before she left, she made one last attempt to reach her friend. Ben, I understand why you're angry. We all are. But this isn't the answer. This will only lead to more violence. Hayes looked at her with sad eyes. Susan, violence already happened. 169 medical personnel were murdered while trying to help wounded civilians. The violence started when the Zephyrians fired on a hospital ship. I'm just finishing it. After Susan left, Hayes worked alone in his laboratory. He contacted old colleagues from his military days, people who understood the harsh realities of war. He reached out to Dr. Carter and the other survivors of the New Hope. He began building a network of people who shared his anger and his determination. Late at night, Hayes would stand at the window of his laboratory, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien species were learning that humans could be killed without punishment. Somewhere out there, other medical ships were at risk. But Hayes was going to change that. He was going to teach the galaxy that humans were more than just healers. He was going to show them that peaceful people, when pushed too far, could become the most dangerous enemies of all. The transformation of Dr. Benjamin Hayes from healer to avenger was complete. The genius had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the destruction of the New Hope, Dr. Benjamin Hayes had transformed his peaceful research laboratory into something much darker. Hidden beneath Terra Nova Research Station in unused storage areas that officially didn't exist, Hayes had built the most advanced weapons development facility in human space. The laboratory was divided into 3 main sections. The first focused on biological weapons designed to target specific alien species. The second developed electronic warfare systems to disrupt alien communication and control systems. The third, and most important, was devoted to what Hayes called his strategic doctrine, a complete reimagining of how humans would conduct warfare. Hayes worked 18 hours a day, driven by images of the murdered medical staff from the New Hope. He had recruited 12 other scientists, all of them people who had lost friends or family members to alien attacks that the Galactic Confederation had ignored or excused. Dr. Rachel Kim had joined after her brother. A medical technician was killed in a friendly fire incident involving Krillian forces. Dr. Mark Johnson came after his wife, a nurse on a relief mission, disappeared when her transport was accidentally destroyed by Luxari energy weapons. Each scientist brought their own expertise and their own anger. "Status report," Hayes said as he entered the biological weapons section. Dr. Kim looked up from her microscope. "The Zephyrian respiratory virus is complete. We've tested it on tissue samples provided by our intelligence contacts. 100% fatality rate, symptoms appear within 6 hours, death occurs within 24 hours. Any chance of it affecting other species?" Hayes asked. "None. The virus is specifically designed to target Zephyrian lung cells. It can't survive in any other biological environment. Even if somehow transmitted to humans, it would die immediately." Hayes nodded and moved to the next station. Dr. Johnson was working on what looked like a simple radio transmitter. The Krillian neural disruptor is ready for field testing, Johnson reported. "It generates an electromagnetic pulse specifically tuned to disrupt their hive mind frequency. We estimate that exposure for more than 30 seconds will cause permanent brain damage." "Range?" Hayes asked. "Current prototype works within a 50-kilometer radius. With the right amplification, we could potentially affect an entire planet." Hayes continued his tour, checking on each project. The Luxari frequency disruption device was nearly complete. The Altarian genetic modification virus was entering final testing. Weapons designed to exploit the specific biological weaknesses of every major alien species in the Confederation. But the biological weapons were only part of Hayes's plan. The real innovation was his strategic doctrine, which he had named Total Warfare. Hayes gathered his team in the main conference room, where he had prepared a presentation that would change the nature of interstellar conflict forever. "For 200 years, Hayes began, human military doctrine has been based on the concept of limited warfare. We target military assets. We avoid civilian casualties. We follow the rules of engagement, even when our enemies don't. The scientists listened carefully. They had all heard rumors about what Hayes was developing, but this was the first time he had explained his complete vision. The attack on the New Hope proved that our enemies don't share our values, Hayes continued. They don't respect medical neutrality. They don't distinguish between military and civilian targets. They see our mercy as weakness. He activated a holographic display showing star maps of alien territories. Traditional military thinking says we should respond to the destruction of a hospital ship by attacking Zephyrian military targets. We should be proportional. We should be reasonable. Hayes paused, letting his words sink in. I propose something different. I propose that when any alien species attacks human medical personnel, we respond by threatening the complete extinction of that species. Dr. Kim shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Ben, that's genocide. That's what we're supposed to be fighting against. Is it genocide if we give them a choice? Hayes asked. Here's how total warfare works. When any species commits a war crime against human medical personnel, we publicly announce that they have 72 hours to surrender the individuals, responsible for prosecution by human courts. If they refuse, we begin systematic elimination of their military forces. If they continue to refuse, we begin elimination of their civilian leadership. If they still refuse, we deploy species-specific biological weapons that will make them extinct. The room was silent for a long moment. Dr. Johnson was the first to speak. Ben, the galaxy will unite against us if we threaten genocide. Will they? Hayes asked. Remember, we're not threatening innocent species. We're only threatening species that commit war crimes against medical personnel. Any species that follows the medical neutrality laws has nothing to fear from us. He brought up another display, showing casualty statistics from recent conflicts. Look at these numbers. In the past year alone, 17 human medical facilities have been attacked by various alien species, 43 medical ships have been destroyed or damaged, over 800 medical personnel have been killed, and what has the Galactic Confederation done? Nothing. Dr. Kim studied the numbers with growing anger. I didn't know it was this bad. The Confederation doesn't want us to know, Hayes replied. They classify most attacks as incidents or accidents. They make excuses for our enemies and tell us to be patient. Hayes walked to the center of the room, his voice growing more intense. Total warfare isn't about revenge. It's about deterrence. Once the galaxy knows that attacking human medical personnel means risking extinction, they'll stop doing it. Hospital ships will be safe again. Medical personnel will be protected. Dr. Johnson raised a concern. What if they call our bluff? What if a species refuses to surrender war criminals and dares us to make them extinct? Hayes looked at him with cold eyes. Then we make them extinct. We can't bluff about something this important. If we threaten total warfare, we have to be prepared to follow through. The implications of what Hayes was proposing began to sink in. Dr. Kim looked around the room at the weapons they had developed. We actually have the capability to do this, she said quietly. We've developed species-specific weapons for every major alien government. Yes, Hayes confirmed. And we're going to build more. By the time we reveal ourselves, we'll have the ability to eliminate any species that threatens human medical personnel. Over the following weeks, Hayes expanded his team and his capabilities. He recruited former military officers who understood strategy and tactics. He brought in engineers who could mass-produce his biological weapons. Most importantly, he began reaching out to the survivors of alien attacks on medical personnel. Dr. Alex Carter was the first to respond to Hayes's carefully worded message. They met in a secure location on New Austin, away from the politicians and diplomats who had failed to protect human medical personnel. "Ben, I got your message," Alex said. "You said you had a solution to the medical neutrality problem." Hayes looked at his former student. Alex had aged years in the months since the New Hope attack. His eyes were harder, his face more serious. "Alex, what would you do if you had the power to make sure no medical ship was ever attacked again?" "I'd use it," Alex replied without hesitation. "Whatever it took." Hayes smiled for the first time in months. "Then we need to talk." He began explaining his total warfare doctrine to Alex, showing him the weapons they had developed, describing the network they were building. Alex listened with growing excitement. "This could actually work," Alex said. "If alien species knew that attacking medical personnel meant extinction, they'd stop doing it." "The question is whether you're willing to help me build it," Hayes said. "This isn't a peaceful solution. This is about making the galaxy afraid of what happens when they murder our doctors and nurses." Alex thought about Captain Morgan, dying in an escape pod after trying to protect patients. He thought about the children who had died in the medical bay of the New Hope. He thought about the Confederation's response to the massacre. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Hayes handed him a list of names. Survivors of medical ship attacks, families of murdered medical personnel, doctors and nurses who had lost colleagues to alien accidents. "Help me build a network," Hayes said. "Help me find people who understand that the old way isn't working. Help me find people who are ready to fight back." As Alex left the meeting, Hayes returned to his hidden laboratory. The biological weapons were nearly complete. The strategic doctrine was fully developed. Soon, it would be time to reveal his creation to the galaxy. The age of human mercy was ending. The age of human justice was about to begin. And Dr. Benjamin Hayes held the key to rewriting galactic history. Dr. Alex Carter stood in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of New Austin Colony, watching as people arrived for the first meeting of what Dr. Benjamin Hayes had named the Medical Corps. The name was deliberately ironic. They were no longer just healers, but avengers of the healers who had been murdered. 43 people had answered the secret invitation. They came from across human space, all connected by tragedy and anger. Dr. Carter recognized many faces from news reports about medical ship attacks. Others were family members of murdered medical personnel. A few were former military officers who had grown disgusted with the Confederation's weak response to alien war crimes. Jake Miller, the communications officer who had survived the New Hope attack, sat in the front row. Beside him was Kelly Brooks, her nursing uniform replaced by civilian clothes, but her determination unchanged. Peter Williams had flown in from Earth, leaving his retirement to join the cause that had cost him so many friends. Hayes walked to the front of the room, carrying a data pad with carefully prepared remarks. But when he looked at the faces before him, people who had lost everything to alien violence, he put the pad aside and spoke from his heart. 6 months ago, the galaxy told us that human medical personnel could be murdered without consequences, he began. The Galactic Confederation called the destruction of the New Hope an incident. They offered compensation instead of justice. They asked us to be patient while our doctors and nurses continued to die. Murmurs of anger rippled through the crowd. These people had heard enough diplomatic excuses. "I brought you here because patience isn't working," Hayes continued. "Diplomacy isn't working. The politicians who promised to protect our medical personnel have failed. It's time for a different approach. He activated a holographic display showing star maps and tactical data. For the past 6 months, I've been developing what I call the Total Warfare Doctrine. It's based on a simple principle. Any species that attacks human medical personnel faces the possibility of extinction. Dr. Lisa Wong, who had lost her sister in a medical ship attack, raised her hand. Dr. Hayes, how do we threaten species with extinction? We're one planet against an entire galaxy. Hayes smiled grimly. Because I've developed weapons that can eliminate entire alien species while leaving humans completely unharmed. Biological weapons targeted at specific alien genetic markers. Electronic warfare systems that can destroy alien communication networks. Frequency disruptors that can dissolve energy-based life forms. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Jake Miller was the first to speak. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about justice, Hayes replied. And deterrence. Once the galaxy knows that attacking our medical personnel means risking extinction, they'll stop doing it. Kelly Brooks stood up, her voice shaking with emotion. Dr. Hayes, I watched children die on the New Hope while Zephyrian ships fired on our medical bay. If your weapons can prevent that from happening again, I'll help you use them. Peter Williams nodded in agreement. I've spent 30 years saving lives. If threatening a few alien species will save thousands of human medical personnel, it's worth it. Hayes began explaining the structure of his organization. The medical corps would operate in 3 levels. The outer level would be public advocates, people who would openly call for better protection of medical personnel through legal channels. The middle level would be intelligence gatherers, people who would monitor alien military activities and identify threats to human medical ships. The inner level would be the weapons operators, people who would actually deploy Hayes's biological weapons when necessary. Dr. Carter will coordinate recruitment, Hayes announced. His experience as a survivor gives him credibility that I lack. Jake Miller will handle communications and intelligence. Kelly Brooks will manage our infiltration into existing medical organizations. Over the following months, the medical corps grew rapidly. Alex Carter used his connections in the medical community to identify potential recruits. Every doctor who had lost a colleague, every nurse who had seen a medical ship attacked, every family member of murdered medical personnel became a potential member. The recruitment process was careful and thorough. Alex would approach potential members with seemingly innocent conversations about medical ship safety. Those who showed anger about the Confederation's failures would receive more detailed discussions. Only those who expressed willingness to take extreme action would be invited to join the inner circle. Dr. Sarah Mitchell joined after her medical transport was attacked by Altarian forces. She had watched 3 nurses die while treating wounded. Civilians and the Confederation had ruled it an unfortunate targeting error. Commander James Scott, a former military officer, joined after his daughter, a medical technician, was killed in what the Confederation called a communications mix-up with Krillian forces. Engineer Robert Chen joined after developing new medical equipment that could save lives on remote colonies, only to see it destroyed in attacks that the Confederation refused to investigate. Each new member brought skills and connections that strengthened the organization. The Medical Corps established hidden bases on 12 different worlds, each one disguised as a legitimate research facility or medical supply depot. Jake Miller created a communication network that allowed secure messaging across human space. Using quantum encryption and routing through seemingly innocent medical channels, the Medical Corps could coordinate activities without detection by government surveillance. Kelly Brooks worked to place Medical Corps members in key positions within human medical organizations. Nurses, doctors, and medical administrators who were secretly part of the organization began gathering intelligence about alien activities and identifying potential targets for retaliation. The most important recruitment was Commander Angela Davis, a former Earth military intelligence officer who had been forced into retirement for questioning orders to avoid conflict with alien forces. Davis brought tactical expertise and connections within the human military. "Dr. Hayes," Davis said during her first briefing, "your biological weapons are impressive, but you need delivery systems. You need ships that can reach alien worlds without being detected. You need soldiers who can deploy these weapons effectively." Hayes nodded. "What do you recommend?" "We need to recruit from within the military," Davis replied. "There are hundreds of officers who are tired of watching aliens kill our people while politicians do nothing. Give me 6 months, and I can build you a fleet." Davis was as good as her word. Using her military contacts, she identified ships' captains, intelligence officers, and special forces soldiers who shared the Medical Corps' anger about alien attacks on medical personnel. Many of them had been forced to stand by and watch while aliens committed war crimes prevented from responding by political considerations. Captain Ryan Murphy had commanded a destroyer that arrived at the scene of a medical ship attack just hours too late to save anyone. The Confederation had ordered him not to pursue the alien attackers. Major Linda Foster led a special forces unit that had discovered evidence of systematic alien attacks on human medical facilities, only to have her reports buried by diplomatic officials. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Thompson had been court-martialed for excessive force after retaliating against alien forces that had attacked a field hospital he was protecting. Each military recruit brought combat experience and equipment that the Medical Corps needed. Soon, Hayes had access to ships, weapons, and soldiers who could deploy his biological warfare agents anywhere in the galaxy. The Medical Corps also began infiltrating human political organizations, not to take control, but to gather intelligence about government decisions and to place people in positions where they could influence policy when the time came to reveal their existence. Dr. Amanda Price became an aide to Chairman Kane of the Colonial Council. Officially, she was there to advise on medical policy. Actually, she was gathering information about the government's response to alien attacks and identifying which politicians might support stronger action. Jake Miller's cousin, Tom Miller, got a job with the Earth Diplomatic Service. His position gave him access to classified communications between human and alien governments, allowing the Medical Corps to monitor alien activities and anticipate threats. By the end of the first year, the Medical Corps had grown from 43 angry people in a warehouse to an organization of over 3,000 members across human space. They had military assets, intelligence networks, manufacturing facilities, and most importantly, weapons that could eliminate entire alien species. Hayes met with his core leadership team in a secure facility on Terra Nova. The original warehouse. Meetings seemed like a lifetime ago. "Status report," he said, looking around the table at the people who had helped him build something that could change galactic history. Alex Carter spoke first. "Recruitment is exceeding all expectations. We have medical personnel in every major human facility. When we reveal ourselves, we'll have supporters throughout the entire medical community." Jake Miller reported on intelligence operations. "We're monitoring alien military communications. We know which species are planning attacks on human targets. We can anticipate threats before they happen." 6 months after the destruction of the Zephyrian base on Kepler 186c, Dr. Benjamin Hayes walked into the main chamber of the Galactic Confederation on Proxima Station. He wore a simple black suit with no military decorations or diplomatic symbols. He needed no such displays of authority. Everyone in the galaxy now knew what he represented. The chamber that had once echoed with debates about trade agreements and territorial disputes was now filled with whispered conversations about human, biological weapons and extinction-level threats. Representatives from hundreds of alien species sat in their designated areas, many of them glancing nervously at the human delegation. Hayes was accompanied by Dr. Alex Carter, now serving as the Medical Corps' official spokesperson, and Commander Angela Davis, representing their military capabilities. Behind them sat Jake Miller, Kelly Brooks, and other survivors of the New Hope attack. The people who had started this revolution were there to see it completed. The Confederation's Secretary General, a tall alien from the Centaurian Republic, called the session to order. His voice carried the weight of someone who had spent the past 6 months dealing with the most significant crisis in galactic history. This emergency session has been called to address the situation created by the organization calling itself the Human Medical Corps, the Secretary General announced. Dr. Hayes, you have been invited to explain your actions and discuss possible resolutions to the current crisis. Hayes stood slowly, looking around the chamber at representatives of species that had once dismissed humans as weak and irrelevant. Many of those same species had learned painful lessons about underestimating human capabilities. Secretary General honored delegates. Hayes began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 6 months ago, I stood in a laboratory looking at reports of alien attacks on human medical personnel. The Galactic Confederation had just classified the murder of 169 medical workers as an unfortunate incident. You offered compensation instead of justice. You asked for patience instead of action. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The representatives remembered those decisions differently, but Hayes's version had become galactic fact. Today, I stand before you as the leader of an organization that has fundamentally changed the nature of interstellar warfare. In the past 6 months, the Medical Corps has demonstrated that any species that attacks human medical personnel faces the possibility of extinction. The Zephyrian representative, Admiral Kexnol, stood to interrupt. Dr. Hayes, your organization committed genocide against 50,000 Zephyrian military personnel. You are war criminals of the highest order. Hayes looked at the Zephyrian, Admiral with cold eyes. Admiral, your forces murdered medical personnel on 17 separate occasions over the past 2 years. The Confederation refused to prosecute these war crimes. We simply provided justice that you failed to deliver. You cannot justify genocide, the Admiral protested. Can I not? Hayes replied. Your forces attacked the hospital ship New Hope, murdering 169 medical personnel who were treating wounded civilians. Your General Vextar personally authorized the destruction of the Centauri Medical Station, killing 47 doctors and nurses. Your government celebrated these attacks as military victories. Hayes activated a holographic display showing documented evidence of Zephyrian war crimes, communications intercepts, targeting orders, and celebration messages that proved the attacks were deliberate. We gave your government 72 hours to surrender the war criminals responsible for these attacks, Hayes continued. You refused. We gave you the choice between justice and extinction. You chose extinction. The chamber was silent as delegates absorbed the implications. Hayes had not acted impulsively or emotionally. He had followed a logical process that gave the Zephyrians multiple opportunities to avoid destruction. Dr. Carter stood to address the chamber. Honored delegates, I am a survivor of the New Hope attack. I watched children die in our medical bay while Zephyrian ships fired on clearly marked hospital vessels. I have spent the past year documenting similar attacks across human space. Carter activated his own display, showing a comprehensive database of alien attacks on human medical facilities. In the past 2 years, human medical personnel have been attacked by forces from 12 different species represented in this chamber. Over 3,000 medical workers have been killed. The Confederation classified most of these attacks as accidents or incidents refusing to investigate or prosecute. The numbers were staggering. Carter had compiled evidence that painted a picture of systematic violence against human medical personnel that the Confederation had ignored or excused. The Medical Corps was created because diplomacy failed, Carter continued. We tried legal channels. We filed complaints. We requested investigations. The Confederation responded with committee meetings and diplomatic protests. Meanwhile, our doctors and nurses continued to die. The Secretary General struggled to maintain order as delegates began arguing among themselves. Some species demanded immediate action against the humans. Others quietly acknowledged that the Medical Corps had valid grievances. Commander Davis stood to address the military implications. The galaxy needs to understand that human military doctrine has permanently changed. We no longer distinguish between military and civilian targets when fighting species that attack our medical personnel. The implications of this statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. For centuries, galactic warfare had followed certain rules and limitations. The humans were announcing that they would no longer be bound by these conventions. We have developed biological weapons capable of eliminating every major species in the Confederation, Davis continued. These weapons are deployed and ready for use. Any species that attacks human medical personnel will face immediate retaliation up to and including complete extinction. The Krillian representative, speaking through their hive mind translator, asked the question everyone was thinking. What guarantees do we have that humans will not use these weapons against innocent species? Hayes smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. The same guarantee you gave us when we asked for protection of our medical personnel. None. He let the answer sink in before continuing. However, the Medical Corps has no interest in attacking species that follow galactic medical neutrality laws. Any species that respects human medical personnel has nothing to fear from us. The Altarian delegate raised a concern. Dr. Hayes, your organization operates outside any legal framework. You acknowledge no authority except your own. How can the galaxy coexist with such an entity? The same way the galaxy coexisted with species that murdered medical personnel, Hayes replied. You adapted to a reality where some beings were above galactic law. Now you must adapt to a reality where humans will enforce the laws you refuse to uphold. Secretary General Vorthon called for order as the chamber erupted in arguments. When quiet was restored, he addressed Hayes directly. Dr. Hayes, what would it take for the Medical Corps to cease its threatening activities and work within established galactic institutions? Hayes considered the question carefully. This was the moment he had been working toward for over a year.